Hi there, it's Mike again. In this episode, we're going to take you from 20 through 24. And you've already seen most of what I'm doing, so I figured I'd blow through it real quick. In this episode, we're assembling the corridor liners on the walls first. And the first thing I have to do is treat the walls the same as I've done everything else that is metallic in this Millennium Falcon that I'm doing. And that's with the Rub and Buff, the 3 shades of Rub and Buff. I start with a gray primer, and then I hit it with the pewter, and then the black, and then the silver leaf. And now I'm just snipping these little pieces and putting them on the mark. One thing that I did, that I always do, is anytime I have one of these spews that are numbered, and this one it's kind of similar on both sides, I put a little dot on the spew itself, and then also the on the manual I put a little dot on it, so that every time I need to grab it I can make sure that it's configured in the same direction. And every time I cut it, there's always a little bit that needs to be sanded off, so I've got my little 320 sandpaper that's on a sheet of plastic, which is really nice for bending it around stuff and doing around corners. And looks like I'm watching a one-day build of Adam Savage's. It's typically what I'd be doing. But anyway, so there's one set, and there's the other, and now we got to paint them. And so in order to paint them, remember the Millennium Falcon is old, and the pads are not pretty and new and starting to yellow. So the first thing I do is I hit it with the yellow pigment, the Vallejo pigment, and I let it dry for a little bit, and then I wipe as much of it off as I can, and sometimes I do it a second time. The trick is just brushing it on, letting it dry for a little bit, and then trying to clean it up as best as possible. And so then, that's what they look like after I got the 3 washes on. And then, in the next episode, we're going to start putting the wall pads on the sides, and we're doing it the same way. I'm going back and forth between organizing screws in my little screw tray, and while the pieces are drying. So that was the yellow pigment, and now we're going to go with the black wash. Now we're going to snip them off, sand them, glue them. And I always want to pre-fit it. And I'm using a thick AC glue. I like the viscosity of the thin, but it seems to go all over the place, and this stuff is sitting upright, and so I'm trying not to use very much. The thick seems to stay in place right where I like it. And this thing's coming together pretty well. So on these pads, one side is angled and the other one isn't, and so you kind of have to fit it in there and make sure that it looks right. And I've had a couple of times where I got the wrong one facing the wrong direction, and so when you put the second one on, it doesn't look right. So I had to peel it off and flip it around. So on episode 22, it's more of the same. A little more yellow pigment, and then the Lovato wash from Vallejo. I'll let it dry for a second and wipe it off. Let it dry for a second, then wipe it off. And then I go back over it with the black model wash. And then in each episode, each kit comes with a set of screws. And so I organize the screws into these little containers that I got. That's a nice little kit. So there's the black wash. I put it on, wipe it off, sometimes I do it again, and this time I wiped a little more of the color off than I wanted, so I put the Lovato wash back on. So then I marked the spew, and I marked the manual so you can see which way's up always, so I get my orientation, so I can always figure out which piece is which. And we're just going to continue putting it together. Pretty happy with how this one ended up. And it's starting to come together. I'm really looking forward to these shipments coming in. I got another one on the way. I'm behind on a couple, actually. I've got a couple sitting and waiting for me. So now we're putting in the rings and then the little walls that we did. And I think that looks pretty awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Stick with me and see if I don't screw this up already.